Right here. Introduction now. We're live. Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. Today we have a special guest. We know him as the Yankee Tankie. But before I get started, let me just say to hit that like button because it helps with the algorithms. Please do so, and also subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Hit the notification bell. Follow me on Twitch. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and all will be well. And as I said, we have a special guest. His name is the Yankee Tankie. And for those who do not know him yet, so introduce yourself, my friend.
Absolutely, my friend. So if you're not familiar with me, I am the Yankee Tankie. You might know me from places like the infrared community, as well as the Center for Political Innovation in my past. So that has an idea of where I might be from. And yeah, I'm just a political streamer that's producing content and YouTube shorts and YouTube videos across different platforms.
How long you been doing this now?
I would say that I've been actively producing content for about a year. Prior to that, I was involved with the Center for Political Innovation, and I was involved with other activism between the Green Party and other organizations.
Okay, yeah. I've been streaming steadily for the past 3 years myself. So, and I've been active for the longest time, and then got burned out and kind of got back into it again. And here we are at this point. So anyway, an event that you endorsed, that I endorsed, and was controversial was called Rage Against the War Machine. And
yes, sir.
Yep. And I'm sorry you weren't able to make it there. I wish you would have been there, but I'm going to tell you, it was a very, very diverse. It was very diverse out there. There was no question about that. And the diversity kind of upset a few people. But but when you have Russian flags, and you have the LGBTQ rainbow flags, and you have libertarians, and you have old school liberals, and you have Leninists, and then you have January 6th insurrectionists, and you have Jehovah's Witnesses, and you have anti-vaxxers, you have paleo-cons, you have socialists, communists, Green Party, everything you can imagine under
the Uru movement was another one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and I joked around earlier this morning. I said that yeah, it's true that well, yeah, probably this is probably one of the few events where the Israeli flag will probably be slightly more popular than the Ukrainian flag. It's just that's how surreal it was at the event, and had speakers that not everybody agreed on, and across the spectrum. And I looked at it this way, we're there to oppose this war.
Yep.
We're there to save humanity. And yeah, I'm sure you got some pushback too, didn't you?
Oh, I mean, for sure. I mean, of course, I already experienced pushback with my radical politics. it's something that I'm just kind of used to. You kind of have a backbone when you're a communist on the internet, and especially someone who calls themselves a MAGA communist, right? But when you're looking at this protest, yeah, there is going to be some pushback. You know why? Because it's no longer this left versus right paradigm that's going on anymore. It's this bottom versus top, and that's exactly what we need in the country right now. It's not just leftists that's against the war. It's not just right wingers who are against the war. The whole of the American people are against sending billions of dollars to a foreign country. If you go to the Midwest, I mean, I live here in Pittsburgh, right? And this is exactly what people are tired of. They don't want to send billions of dollars to Ukraine. I mean, frankly, there's a very large Ukrainian population here in the Pittsburgh area, and even a sizable portion of them do not want the United States to continue sending money to Ukraine. So, with a nuclear holocaust on the horizon, we cannot be doing this whole leftist, right wing infighting on both sides too, because the libertarians, from my understanding, were experiencing the same stuff. Oh, this is a communist rally, like you shouldn't be here, da da da. Every end of the political spectrum is experiencing pushback because, frankly, those in the ruling class do not want those on the left and those on the right to actually find common grounds for any reason, whether it's the war, whether it's the economy, whether it's healthcare, whether it's anything. They don't want us to unite. They want to keep us divided.
Well, it's like I hear when Comrade Misty, are you familiar with Comrade Misty on Twitter?
I think I've seen her around.
Yeah. She said it. I like how she says it. She's like, I'm not going to have a little checklist asking somebody, paraphrasing her. Where do you stand on Medicare for all? Where do you stand on the Green New Deal? Where do you stand on trans women in the restroom? Where do you stand on abortion? She's not going to ask that. She's going to, whether it's Assange or whether it's issues like this war or what have you. We're in this together to try to try to save humanity with the war, and that's all that matters, because nothing is going to matter. All these debates and these culture war fights not going to matter to anything if the human race is extinct.
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about who is a man, who is a woman, if there is no men and there is no women, because we're all dead, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we don't start buckling down and building coalitions with people we don't agree with, there's no stopping this. I mean, the United States, we know, historically speaking, they have always escalated wars. I mean, this is something I talked about with my debate with Dylan Burns yesterday. Like when you're looking at the history of the United States, we have always escalated conflicts when we're in a crisis. And right now, the United States is experiencing a crisis. When you have stereotypical allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia, right? Countries that, I mean, as someone who's a communist, I do not agree with the even existence of Israel, obviously. And I don't agree with Saudi Arabia's politics for obvious reasons. But I see them selling off their US dollar reserves and then buying the Chinese yuan. That's the real reason this war is going on in the first place. Now, I know that many of your audience might not be on the side of Russia, and that's fine. You don't have to. But we can come to an agreement at the very least that if this conflict is not resolved, if there isn't some sort of peace negotiations between Russia, Ukraine, NATO, and the United States, because let's be real, regardless of whether you support Ukraine or don't, you do know that the United States and NATO is part of the reason this war is happening. So they have to be in the negotiation tables, and we need to come to some sort of peace resolution between all of these powers and stop not just an escalating war that is preventing people in this country from having clean water infrastructure, but also to prevent a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's like I said, when it came to the Iraq War 20 years ago, I support the troops so much. I want them back here safely. I support the Ukrainian people so much that I want the U.S. to stop putting its nose into their business, keeping this conflict alive between the Russia and the Ukraine, exacerbating the situation. Because this goes back to the year 2014 when the CIA toppled a government that was friendly toward Russia, and they weren't having it. And basically when that happened, and that's when the Nazi problem kind of surfaced. And I remember this back then, and it was on the news back then about this Nazi problem. But you go and talk about Nazis today in the Ukraine. Oh, there's no Nazis in the Ukraine. Maybe a couple of knuckleheads who are private in the army. No. There are actual Nazis serving in high levels in the military, some serving as cabinet ministers. They celebrate Stefan Bandera. Now, if an individual wants to celebrate Stefan Bandera, I mean, they're a piece of shit for it, but I'm not a thought police person,
Sure.
But Poland gave Ukraine a lot of grief recently over celebrating Stefan Bandera. And I've been told by some people I made up the name out of thin air.
Well, I mean, get right down to it. There's so many people. I mean, I'll be real with you too. A lot of folks on the pro-Russia side, they didn't know who Stephen Bandera was before. I know I didn't know who Stephen Bandera was. Not everyone is so versed on these politics, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, these people in Ukraine, especially those in the government that are passing, official national holidays to celebrate Stephen Bandera, while they're participating in a conflict with Russia. Since 2014, they were involved with ethnic cleansing, frankly, inside of the Donbass region. Something that Dylan Burns and other people from like the pro-NATO side of this whole conflict will just deny. They'll just say, oh, well, Russia instigated it. Okay, but what happened with the Minsk Accords, right? If Russia really instigated this, okay, then why were they trying to push for peace early on before we started seeing, Abraham tanks and freaking all these other weapons the United States has been sending to Ukraine over the last year? So, look, the reality of this conflict is that it's going to continue to escalate if we don't stop it. And, this is something I also talked about with Dylan Burns. Joe Biden said that in the first few months of the beginning of this war, that he would not send Abraham tanks to Ukraine because that would be a sign of escalation towards a third world war. And what did Joe Biden do? He went against his word and lied to the American people and told them that, no, we're actually are going to send Abraham tanks. And that just goes to show you, when is it that there's going to be boots on the ground? When is the U.S. government going to escalate and actually make this officially not a proxy war, but the Third World War?
Yeah, and that is very frightening. I mean, it seems like almost every 5 weeks, it seems like something happens that we're just like in the cusp of it. Something happening, and then it's like they're just like NATO's waiting for something to say, well, this is a violation of Article 5. I mean, like the accidental rocket that went into Poland. I mean, they said this was a Russian rocket. Turned out to be, it was Ukrainian. And then they were like, well, if Russia wouldn't have invaded, that Russian built rocket in the Ukraine would not have been in Poland. It's like, y'all trying to find an excuse. And here's the thing, historically, I mean, go back to the demise of the Soviet Union when it became the Russian Federation, or when it was about to become the Russian Federation. What happened was that there was an agreement made when the Warsaw Pact became no more, that they were not going to join NATO. And from the Bill Clinton administration to the George W. Bush administration, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, all the way to Joe Biden, one by one, these countries started joining NATO. And, and I'm not, would I vote for Putin if I live in Russia? No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George W. Bush either. I think they all fucking suck.
Yeah, I look, and you also have to kind of look at the perspective, right? Like, as an American, I understand based on certain Western values that a lot of Americans have why they wouldn't want to support Vladimir Putin. They would probably point to mistreatment of certain LGBTQ communities or whatever, right? That's a very common thing. I feel many of the left would point to, but I would like to say to be a little bit of a Putin apologist to a little extent.
No problem.
Um, I would say that Vladimir Putin, when he came into the Russian Federation, you have to remember where the Russian Federation was coming from after the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? There was a massive amount of economic depression. All these state industries became privatized. You saw the liquidation of the Russian society effectively by these neoliberals that came in. And Russia was in a desperate situation. The population had decreased partially from people dying and partially from people literally leaving Russia. And this was also the case of all the other the other Soviet states within the Soviet Union, right? Uh, you know, and what did Vladimir Putin do? He came in, he nationalized Gazprom and Rosneft, the oil and natural gas companies, and he started to use the profits to rebuild the country's infrastructure. He started to use the profits from the oil and natural gas to fund social safety nets and things of that nature, the fund job programs, economic things that, frankly, we could see the United States could use right now, and look, he saved the Russian Federation, and that's the only reason that Russia's in the position in the first place to challenge the United States unipolar world order. Now, I don't think challenging the unipolar world order means that we need to have this war continue forever. I do support Russia's actions. I will admit that. A lot of people say I cannot be anti-war if I support Vladimir Putin or the invasion of Russia. Uh, but when the United States is the aggressor, I feel that, I can be anti war on the side of America. I don't feel that the United States needs to fund Russia. And likewise, a lot of people on the other side can agree we shouldn't be funding Ukraine. The conflict isn't the business of the United States. And my personal opinions, frankly, on what's going on in Russia isn't relevant for the cause in the United States. And I think that was one of the main pushbacks I think we saw against the protests, that, oh, this is just a pro-Russia rally. And I wanted to dispel that notion entirely, because none of us on the pro-Russia side are arguing to fund the Russian Federation against Ukraine. So, we're just arguing that we should stop supporting NATO and stop funding Ukraine and keep America out of the business of the sphere of influence of Russia, because at the end of the day, that American people don't care about that. They want to make sure there's food on the table. They want to make sure that their infrastructure isn't falling apart. They want to make sure they have access to education and healthcare and basic things that most industrialized civilizations have.
Yeah, things that other countries take for granted, and that's the thing right there. And I just see Biden putting money funding fucking Nazis in other countries across the world, when we have, like you said, the crumbling infrastructure. Some of this money could have been used for healthcare, for housing the homeless, or what have you. And even if I'm going to be a conservative for a moment, I would have found taking that money, paying off the national debt, more acceptable than to go and to have it to fund the Nazis and kill, exacerbate the conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. No matter what, whether you're a conservative or you're a progressive or a socialist or whatever you want to call yourself at the end of the day, right? Everyone can agree that whether you're paying off the debt and relieving the debt ceiling crisis that's going on the conservative side of the aisle, and whether you're a socialist or progressive and you want to see, the country actually have basic economic freedoms, frankly. And that's what I would call that. I would call it economic freedoms, because, to be able to afford basic livings in society, that makes you freer as a human being in a country.
I would agree with that. And, like, for example, even going back prior to the disintegration of the Soviet Union. And yeah, I mean, my socialism may differ from your socialism in a lot of ways, but I will say this: any problems that existed during the Soviet Union, the fact that everybody had health care, housing, job, education, those were not bad things. They were
Yeah.
not things to make fun of. They were not things to be called evil or anything like that. And there were conflicts in the world. There were some conflicts in the world where they were no question the good guys. So I mean,
Hmm.
the moral support they gave to Vietnam that solved the Khmer Rouge problem. What did the United States do? I cannot think of the name of the monarch from Cambodia that was exiled, but he formed a partnership with the Khmer Rouge, for
Hmm.
example. And because the United States were butthurt from Vietnam, they were like, well, fuck Vietnam, and so they went,
Yep.
you know, I mean, that's the mindset of this country. In Afghanistan,
Hmm.
I'm going to sound very hypocritical, but while the United States, I was glad that the United States withdrew from Afghanistan.
Hmm.
I always thought that the Soviets were the good guys in Afghanistan in the 80s. Even in my revisionist days when I was, a little harsher on communism, I always
Hmm.
said that the Soviets were objectively a force for good in Afghanistan, and that the Reagan administration bringing down pushing the Soviets back indirectly ended up causing 9/11 to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I would say though, in the what we see of Afghanistan, before we left out, what was Afghanistan war post, the influence of the Soviet Union and all that stuff in the United States, the 20-year war we were in with Afghanistan, right? Uh, Look, it was another proxy war to some extent. When you look at what was going on, it was destabilization in the region of China. I believe it's the Xinjiang region, if I'm pronouncing it right. It borders Afghanistan, and they talk about, oh, how there's this genocide of Uyghurs or whatever in modern China, right? Well, first of all, that's not true. There's no evidence of that, and we literally have satellite footage evidence proving otherwise, based on uh, organizations from the United States, NGOs. Radio Free Asia would be another big example of a propaganda outlet that's been pushing this idea of a Uyghur genocide, right? And that's ultimately what Afghanistan was. And look, we can criticize the Chinese government on certain things like their old zero COVID policy, for example. That's one of the things that I disagreed with when it came to China. I do have my criticisms for that country. I'm not just some sort of pro China, pro Russia, blah, 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 no matter what. I do have disagreements with politics within some of these countries, right? But, when it comes to US imperialism, we shouldn't be supporting proxy wars on borders of countries, whether it was the Afghanistan war that we did with China for 20 years, or now it's Ukraine over with Russia, that we've been operating with that conflict since 2014. This is the pattern of U.S. imperialism. It's setting up proxy wars, trying to destabilize their geopolitical enemies. They've been doing it with China. They've been doing it with Russia. They did it with the former Soviet Union. And we know what they've did in South and Central America as well. We know what they've done in Africa. We know what they've done in Europe. I mean, it's a proven pattern. And frankly, people that are not suspicious of the U.S. government, people like saying his name again, Dylan Burns, it's this is really, truthfully, what you're looking at is these people are shilling for U.S. imperialism. That's what it gets down to. They ignore the record of the U.S. government. They ignore that. They say that, it's just a conspiracy. It's not the same government, da da da. But at the end of the day, we know it's the same system. Still the same deep state. It's still the same imperialist power that's been controlling the world since the Second World War. It's influenced by the Bank of, like the City of London and Wall Street in New York City. And this is imperialism, and you can say that Russia's imperialist too or whatever. That's fine, but we're at home in America. Okay, I don't agree with your interpretation, but I don't need to agree with your interpretation. We need to agree on stop funding our side of imperialism.
Well, it's another thing about it when it comes to and it sounds like I'm bashing the United States or whatever, but when you think about the bomb that ended the World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, the United States was the only one that's ever dropped the nuke. And I don't
Yeah.
think any country should have one. By the way, I think there should be a some kind of a treaty to have a commitment to get rid of the nuclear armaments, and whatever your stance is on nuclear energy, maybe put it to peaceful use or
Hmm.
find a way to in a very clean way to get rid of it.
Mm.
I mean, I have, if I've gotten more radical anywhere in my politics, I was always a pacifist and skeptical of U.S. foreign policy, but I've gotten to be a bit more anti-imperialist in the last few years. So, because just observing objectively what the United States is doing doesn't make me, well, I'm not necessarily a patriotic American, but
Hmm.
yeah, but I see what the United States have done, and and everything. And I'm not saying the people who serve in a uniform are the people in the military serving in the uniform are
Hmm.
terrible people. They're following orders and all that, but it's a lot of suit and ties up in Washington D.C. A lot of these gray hair suit and tie politicians that that they dictate the policies that's with corporations and the foreign policies, and everything's kind of entangled, and it's created a large part of the mess that we're in. Now, I'm not a cultural relativist. I think that all societies can are capable of doing shitty things, and all that, and that's on them too. But I'm not going to sit there and rah rah rah. United States is correct. Rah rah rah. I mean, it's here are liberals, a lot of liberals, a lot of progressives acting like Bush Cheney era neocons watching Fox News in the year 2003, and Rachel Maddow is today's Sean Hannity. It gives me a headache to think about it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, look, looking at the direction of the media specifically and how they have gone along with the U.S. war machine, honestly, from the very beginning, I mean, look at the war on terror. What was the media doing? What was CNN, MSNBC, and all these mainstream media outlets doing? They were, putting on a show with the war in Iraq. They were putting on a show with the war in Afghanistan. They insisted, they defended every single Pentagon, CIA talking point that they could during this whole conflict. They covered up, torture, of these people in Guantanamo Bay. Like a lot of these people not even involved with U.S. and terrorism. They had deals with Pakistan to basically take warlords that were political enemies of the Pakistani government, and they just sent them to Guantanamo Bay as if they were members of Al Qaeda. And we don't need to go into the graphic details, but the gruesome
Mm-hmm.
levels of torture that we saw in Guantanamo Bay, it's absolutely disgusting. And that's some of the stuff that between that and the additional war crimes that the media covered up for, all the drone bombings, the weddings that the U.S. has drone bombed to hell, both under the Bush administration, towards the end of his administration, and that's remember during the Obama administration too. Look, like this is the point that I have to make because so many folks will say to me, oh, I support the Republican Party. I'm just a communist that tails the Republican Party instead of a communist that tails the Democratic Party. But no, look, like the history of the Republican Party is just as bad as the Democratic Party. The Rhino Republicans, there is no difference between the Rhino Republicans and the mainstream Democrats. And frankly, when you look at the voting records, even the rhetoric is different. It's also the same with the Squad, same with AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, all of these, like Justice Democrats or whatever you want to call them, right? They all do the same thing. They all vote this way. AOC we know for a fact she voted to send more money to Israel right during the time of their involving more settlements in Palestine. Look, and I have a very complicated position on the Israel-Palestine issue, different than a lot of leftists, but we can all agree that the Israeli government and the settlements that's going on, that, you know, our politicians and our media always are covering up for, you know, this is a no duh. And, you know, people, frankly, some of the people on the left and on the right too, a lot, the DeSantis deception is deep in that regard, right?
You were the one
But a
that
lot,
came up with that, weren't you?
what's that?
The DeSantis deception. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yes.
interrupt.
No, no, you're fine. That was one of the things that I was arguing, that the Haas of the infrared community was arguing. He kind of started the whole MAGA communism thing and made it clear that, showing that DeSantis, like, you can have your criticism for Donald Trump, but if you're a MAGA supporter, if you're someone that believes that the American working class has been screwed over by the deep state, screwed over by the CIA and the FBI and our tax codes and all these other things that conservatives like to rail against, well, DeSantis is not on your side. He's the same globalist elites, right? But, you know, to get back on point here, you know, the Republicans and the Democrats, you know, there's fundamentally no difference. You know, just like at the end of the day, most of Fox News, you have Tucker Carlson on occasion breaking, you know, the barrier of Fox News' normal reporting. Problems I have with Tucker Carlson, of course. You know, at the end of the day, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they're wings of the Democratic and Republican Party, and they are the media propaganda machine for the two mainstream parties.
Yes, they are. I used to think there was a difference. Let's say 10 years ago, I used to think that there was a real difference between, let's say, MSNBC and Fox, and really, there's none. I mean, except for some culture war shit. I mean,
Right.
you know, that's about it. I mean, you know, I mean, you talk about, I mean, really, in some ways, Fox News were friendlier to Bernie Sanders, for example, than MSNBC. You would think,
Mm-hmm.
you think it'd be the other way around, but
We saw the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. Not to interrupt, but, you know, just to add to your point.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. They went after her, and you know, calling her. I mean, they're always throwing Russian at her and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
she's a colonel in the military, in the army, and now, and she could be in a hell of a lot of trouble if somebody wants to try to make it stick. When I don't think she's done anything wrong, but as I said, she gets a lot of pushback, you know, on the foreign policy thing, because the neocons and the shit libs both hate her from both parties. Now, I'm a little disappointed by some political positions where she has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3-4 years ago, I was wanting her to be Bernie Sanders' running mate. I was there at that time. But I did a video this morning calling for a Jimmy Dore, Breonna Joy Gray ticket.
Mm-hmm.
That would upset everybody, the powers that be everywhere.
I would happen to agree. I mean, Jimmy Dore is a given. I mean, that would be a nightmare for the Democratic Party, especially if, you know, there's any real traction for Jimmy Dore, which has a pretty big audience. Breonna Joy Gray, she's an interesting character. She's, of all the people, just to give my personal opinion on her, of all the people that I see within the old Bernie Sanders camp or whatever, she might be one of them. There's like, she's, you know, she's still a little bit on the edge in the context of, you know, she's still within the same progressive circles, but she's one of the few ones that, you know, has consistently come out in defense of Jimmy Dore. She's one of the few ones that, you know, with the whole progressive split with the Kyle Kalinske crowd and TYT compared with the Jimmy Dore crowd and all that stuff, she was one of the few people that, you know, was pretty level-headed through that whole situation, that didn't just go along with, you know, TYT and Kyle Kalinske and all that.
So Kyle's kind of in the middle. He's in the middle.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about Vosh, the only thing I agree with Vosh on, with regard to that feud, is that Kyle sort of is bridge between the TYT Sam Cedar left and the Jimmy Dore Gray Zone left. He's sort of like that bridge.
Yeah, and I think Crystal Ball is kind of also helped playing that role, their whole relationship aside. I mean, they've been doing content together, Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske, for a while. And I think that she's kind of holding Kyle to be this bridge, so to speak, between that, because they don't want to lose the Jimmy Dore left, even though they pretend that they don't care or whatever, and they want to attack him or whatever. What they want him to do is effectively submit to the more conservative end of the progressive wing. Frankly, that's my observation to that. And that side of the progressive wing, let's also be real, they're very well funded. I mean, like that TYT, who was that billionaire, Sheldon Adelson or something like that, that funded TYT to,
Jeffrey
$1 billion or multiple $1 million or whatever?
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh, it's just Jeffrey Katzenberg. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at, a very bought outside. They're just as corporate in a lot of ways. I mean, we say that there's no difference between CNN and MSNBC. Frankly, I don't see much of a difference nowadays between TYT and MSNBC.
They're MSNBC made for hipsters.
I think that's an accurate way to describe it. Yes.
Yeah. 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 One of my Twitter friends, I think you might be Twitter friends with her too. Jackie's page. Is that
okay?
Yeah. She talked about the MSNBC people with their goggles. I'm like, hey now. Yeah.
But do you see TYT? They've done the same thing. I mean, look at the whole Aramonte stuff with Syria, right? I think that's a perfect example.
Aramonte side on that one.
Yeah, same here. I mean, Aramonte, disagreements as I might have with him on other issues, as I do with everyone that's within this anti-war coalition, right? He is one of the best people on the progressive side of the aisle. And, he's the one revealing the truth about what's going on with Syria. He was the one that proved that Assad had the support that he did. That it wasn't saying that the whole election was rigged. It's saying that, Assad gassed his own people or whatever, we know this is propaganda. We had a CNN reporter that was coming in there on camera smelling backpacks. If chemical weapons were really dropped in Syria, you think you as a news reporter should be smelling the backpack that was in the site of the chemical attack? And they'll just be like, oh yeah, this smells like chemicals or whatever. Like, we're supposed to believe you? I mean, and this is what the mainstream media does, and this is what TYT is now defending, because it's mainstream media for hipsters. That's like in the same way that your friend has described it and the way you've described it. I think it's an accurate depiction of how TYT operates. So we have to end this war, and there's still going to be shit libs that are going to come after us. And we know, the Libertarian Party. There's still going to be people from the right that are going to go after the Libertarian Party, that for daring to work with the left. But we have to ignore them. We need this left-right coalition, bottom versus top. That is the pathway forward. That's a real coalition that can actually bring material change to this country.
Yeah, and people have told me, oh, they're going to try to change your mind. That's how it works. When the right and the left works together, the left ends up capitulating to the right, or what? It's not about. We're talking about us. We're talking about. I mean, I'm not out here to turn libertarians into Scandinavian style social democrats. I'm not out there. I mean, I'm not out there to do that. If they want to go and end these damn wars, I'm going to work with them. I'm not going to work with them on healthcare. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to work with them when it comes to their position on labor unions. Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. I'm not going to work with them on, but I will work on them on issues where there's commonality.
Well, I mean, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is some libertarians actually are pro labor unions, because they believe that, workers are part of the market forces. within the system of capitalism, right? That's a common ground that a lot of leftists, frankly, the progressive side of the aisle should be able to have outside of this anti-war coalition, right? Let's not pretend that like it has to end here. Like we stop this war, we're successful, awesome. We should snowball that into where else do we agree? Because that's how any material change is going to happen in this country, right? Let's work with whoever that is willing to work with us on issues we agree upon, and then we can fight it out in the stuff we disagree upon. But let's handle that stuff to when we are finally out of the things that we agree upon that we can actually change in this country.
Believe it or not, there's actually a small socialist caucus in the Libertarian Party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember after the 2016 election feeling really, really pissed off because I lost about 30 friends on Facebook. Literally lost about 30 friends on Facebook for voting for Jill Stein because I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton, and I didn't. I will not. And I make no apologies. If I can go back to the year 2016 under the same circumstances, I will vote for Jill Stein again and again and again and again and again because Hillary Clinton I absolutely despise for different reasons from Donald Trump. But the Donald Trump is policies. I never hated him personally, but just the policies. At least when he does bad policies, he managed to make me laugh doing it. So,
well, I mean, let's also be real too. I mean, Donald Trump. Let's compare him 2016 Donald Trump to 2020 Donald Trump, right? Night and day, absolutely. I mean, the 2016 Donald Trump, he was arguing for, capping the cost of pharmaceuticals. He was talking about bringing manufacturing back into the United States. I mean, let's be real. Donald Trump was elected on a populist message, and he, for whatever reason, whether it was because he had all these deals with people like Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, or other capitalist interests like the owner of Fox News, for example, right? You have all these different people. Like at the end of the day, Donald Trump, he ran on a populist message, and if he was actually able to implement his policies, or if he actually had any drive to do so, I mean, obviously those would have been net positive things. And this is another thing, let's reach out to MAGA, because a lot of people say, oh, MAGA, they're all really bad people, or, oh, they just have the wrong politics and they're reactionary. But no, like the reason why Donald Trump was elected, a lot of two-time Obama voters that turned around in 2016 to vote for Donald Trump was because he thought he would actually bring material change to the country. And, a lot of MAGA people, they do want cheaper pharmaceuticals. 60% of the Republican Party believe in Medicare for all. And a large portion of those supporters of Medicare for all are Trump supporters. A lot of people that supported Trump supported Bernie Sanders.
That's true.
There is all kinds of crossover.
And not all Trump supporters, not all MAGA people are like, just like within the socialist and communist world, you have different tendencies. On my little corner, you have your social democrats, your Fabians, your democratic socialists, your anarchists, whatever. And then you got in the Leninist area, you have Stalinists, you have Trotskyists, you have the Maoists. You have all kinds of flavors and puzzles, you could say, or tendencies. I would say that on the other side, you have the same thing. Yeah. You have people who are MAGAs who are libertarians. You have some who are paleo conservatives. You have some who are just standard Fox News, Kool-Aid drinking people who are just supportive of whoever is the leader of the party at the moment, listening to Rush Limbaugh and Ben Shapiro. And then you got it just depends who you run across. Like the left, you got people who squabble amongst themselves, and you can't just kind of put a one size fit all on every single almost every single movement. I say.
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
nuance out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look at all these different like you can say, oh, this person has this ideology and that person has that ideology. Well, I can't work with them because they have this opinion. I can't work with them because I have that opinion. This is not the way real politics is supposed to work, right? Real politics is created from coalitions of people from different segments of society, and like not just on ideological lines. Frankly, let's talk on class lines. When you look at the working class of the country, you look at what I deem the servant class, which is your service sector or whatever, still an oppressed, in debt group of people that just have a different relation to the means of production, without getting super related into theory. But you have the permanently unemployed class, people that cannot find access to any form of employment. They cannot access the means of production at all. And you have the petite bourgeoisie, this small business owner, people that are just mom and pop stores, or a small printing office, a small newspaper, local newspaper. All these types of people are all in debt, and they're all like put in positions where they're considering, like, their children are considering going off to fight into these wars that the US keeps pushing, right? So we're all forced to go off the war effectively for economic reasons, and we're not far away from a draft if we end up entering a third world war. Let's be real. And we're also all in debt by what is the debt collector ruling class, this very specific section of capital within the ruling class, who their only interest is effectively to maintain their own existence. They don't care about getting more wealthy. They just want to stay as wealthy as they are and keep everyone else in poverty, whether you're a small business owner, whether you're part of the working class or the serving class, whether you're someone that's homeless in the street that can't access employment. It doesn't and ultimately matter. They want to keep us all poor, and they want to keep the world poor, is ultimately what it gets down as well. It's not just the American working class. I mean, if you remember back in 2020, during the BLM marches, right, there were people that came up with a really good slogan, no matter how you feel about those marches, right? And the slogan was, the same who bombed the Middle East are the same who oppress us on the streets. And that's just the truth. And like, that is the class line, ultimately, is what it gets down to. It is the 99%, as they said at Occupy Wall Street. Shout out to Red Illuminati. Pella, he was one of the original organizers that I met of Occupy Wall Street. Great guy. It's a 99% versus the 1%. That's what we have to get back down to. That is the fundamental roots that we have to understand. It's not about like black versus white, gay versus straight, left versus right. It's not about that dynamic. That's the dynamic that the ruling class wants to utilize to keep us separated. And that's the class dynamic we have to understand, is the debtor class versus the debt collector class. That's the foundation of everything.
Yeah, well, and it seems like if people wants to do a dialogue, you have people that wants to go and give somebody a lot of shit over it, and it's just kind of like, what are you doing talking to that person? You got a lot of explaining to do. And I'm just like, grow. I'm telling these people they need to grow the fuck up.
Do I have explaining to do? Really?
I live in North Carolina. I live in a rural area. Okay. I mean, my dad's family, pretty much Republican. I mean, they're not like super political, but they tend to vote that way. My mother's family, Puerto Rican, live all around the country and live in Puerto Rico. Probably about 90% of them, for those, they're voting Democrat and Republican, otherwise, what have you. But mostly Democrat. So and I'm like the weirdo. I'm the one that became the socialist. I'm the one that I'm the only one that have work in the private sector. That sort of thing. But I'm not. And I live here. I live in Trump country. Johnson County is deep Trump country. And there are people I talk to around here. I mean, they're okay. I mean, on a personal level, that I wouldn't agree with politically. But if I go turn somebody away because they got a Trump flag on their pickup truck. I mean, you
Right.
know, I mean that's silly.
Yeah, it really is. It's this is kind of my personal experience growing up in a small town that I no longer live in. It's called Spring City, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
Used to have a population of about 3,000 people when I lived there. The town's not the same that I grew up in, but I used to live not that far away from these two neighbors that I had. Right, probably like 5, 6 houses down from where I lived, and one side of the street had Donald Trump, MAGA, or like had a MAGA flag, the whole nine. Donald Trump 2020, when the time came around for the 2020 election. He had it back in 2016 for a straight 4 years. And I'm sure to this day, this guy still has the stuff on this property, right? And on the other side was a Democrat. And he just hated Donald Trump. That was what it got down to, right? And he had a sign that just like basically said, "Fuck Donald Trump, screw Donald Trump. Donald Trump is like a buffoon, orangutan or whatever." And it's just like you saw like these neighbors always going at each other's throats, and you could always see it on one side and the other side of the street and their neighbors' yards, and they're always fighting with each other, and we always knew it, even though none of us even talked to these neighbors. It was just all public in the eye with all these signs and like clear aggression against each other. It was ridiculous, right? And this is what the ruling class has really done, where they've taken advantage of the whole Republican versus Democrat, and it's no longer about politics, it's no longer about ideology, it's about my team is better than your team. It's as simple as looking at the Giants versus the Cowboys, to use a football example, right?
Like a cultural identity too. It's a
Yeah.
cultural identity, a brand.
Yeah, it's a cultural identity. It's a brand. It's like sports teams, and these people hate each other, you know, and frankly, why? If you sat down, like over the dinner table and talked to your neighbor, like one side's a Trump supporter and the other side's just a vote blue, no matter who, Democrat, right? We know that you're going to find so many different agreements that between these two sides, and frankly most Americans have so much in common with each other, but the ruling class takes the little pieces of differences that we have, and sometimes it's literally as simple of what team you vote for, and they pit us against each other. And you know I'm not angry at the average American when they're angry at each other, right? Because I love my fellow American. You know, you might not consider yourself a patriot. I consider myself a patriot, but I don't consider myself a patriot in the context of like super patriotism, which, if you would like to understand that, Michael Prenti would be a good person to read on that, right?
I understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah, like it's about patriotism for the land of the people, and not about the state, not about this corrupt government. And we need to understand that us, the American people, have so much in common with each other, and we need to stop fighting amongst each other and start building real solidarity with each other. And the hope is that this war against the machine rally that we saw in DC is the beginning of building a real anti-imperialist, anti-war coalition that maybe will even be at one day a populist political coalition actually capable of seizing political power from this two-party duopoly, and actually create a system in which is for and by the people, where it is once again 1776 within our revolutionary past, re-embraced into the modern 21st century. That is the movement that we need, and that will only happen when we have more events like this rally, where we have Americans of many different political affiliations all coming together to realize one simple thing: fuck this war.
Exactly. Fuck the military-industrial complex and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I mean, this, as they were saying Sunday, John F. Kennedy apparently was going to try to shut down the CIA, and we saw what happened to him. And I noticed that when Dwight Eisenhower gave his speech about the military-industrial complex, he did it just about on his way out of the door.
No.
Yeah. he didn't do it while he during the middle of his presidency.
It's a damn shame. It really is.
Yeah. So, and I think he knew the ramifications if he would have, and he just, and it's understandable. I mean, he didn't want to die, you
Yeah.
know. But he felt like he had a duty to somehow try to get that message across and do it while still living.
Yeah, and there's still some folks that are going to keep that torch lit. I really have faith in the American people that this will be the beginning. It might have been just a small protest. It might have only been a few thousand people. But at the end of the day, this could be what really will ignite the flame of the American people. And Willie, I'm really thankful for this conversation that we've had today because, you know, look, we need to start having more of these types of conversations. When you're talking to me, you have to remember that I'm only left wing as being a communist, but I have much more conservative politics at the end of the day, especially on these social issues, right? And I know that you have maybe these more socially progressive political opinions,
I'm
but
with
we need to have this.
leftist.
What's that?
I'm a anti-cancel culture leftist.
Absolutely, right? And that's why we need to keep having more of these conversations, more of this dialogue, so we can really actually start breaking down these boundaries, these artificial boundaries that the ruling classes put on us.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. But this Dylan Burns guy. I mean, I, every time I mean, I'll listen to him just I just can't believe that he and someone like Bosch and people like that, and who's the other one? Xander Hall, all those fuckers. They have
Xander or something like that. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
yeah, they have the base they have, the listing base, and because I mean it's just
De-
absolute garbage.
yeah, Destiny would be another one of these types of people. You
Yes.
know, like you had this whole I mean, and any community has like these orbiters around a particular person, right? These are orbiters of Destiny, orbiters of Vosh, orbiters of Dylan Burns. These are all people that orbit each other, that and for a lack of better terms, they're just sucking each other off, frankly. They don't actually care about the American people. And frankly, this is something that you and me kind of talked about through private messages, I believe. But, this whole bread tube CIA funding, look, these groups of people, they're literally being funded by the government in certain cases. Some of them are doing it willingly, sure, but ultimately, at the end of the day, that's where it's coming from, and they're doing this to shill for American imperialism. And we can see the money. This is not some sort of crazy conspiracy. Dylan Burns wants to pretend it's some sort of conspiracy, but that's the truth. I mean, we saw with the Gray Zone. The Gray Zone revealed this. Great news outlet, Max Blumenthal and everything, great folks over there. They revealed that, the British intelligence agency, which is very closely aligned with the CIA, if you understand, the relationship between the British Empire and the U.S. imperialist system, right? It's the city of London and the bank, the street of Wall Street. We know they work hand in hand. These people are getting funded by these groups of people up on the top, and they're spreading this propaganda and spreading division between the American people. And this is why I've debated Dylan Burns twice and I've debated Bosch. And you can criticize me and say that the character that I play, I'm real bombastic or whatever, right? And you can also say that my social opinions are pretty socially conservative, and you can not like that, and that's fine. But there's a reason why I'm going after these people, because they represent the worst of the propagandists, frankly. I mean, we criticize CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and TYT even, but these people, unlike those sources, are getting direct funding from the federal government, and they pose themselves to be just like average people that are on the internet, just like you or me. That they're just pretending. I mean, rather they are just pretending to actually be these people. But frankly, we know who they actually are. They are feds, and that might be a oh, that's a strong position, Yankee. Why are you taking such a strong position? But we see the evidence.
Well, I mean, what was it? The Church Report in the early '70s. They talked about what was called the counterintelligence program of the FBI. Started in the 1950s and supposedly ended in the 1970s. I was telling a friend of mine that I think that all the disunity there is on the left today, I think had a lot to do with a lot of the counterintelligence in this country. A lot of people kind of sneak into these organizations and movements and cause a lot of trouble. I don't know if you ever heard of David McReynolds.
Not familiar with him.
He was the 1980 and 1980 and the 2000 Socialist Party candidate for president. Lifelong pacifist. I don't know if you remember the draft card burning in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
The three gentlemen burning the draft cards.
I'm familiar with it.
Famous picture. The tall guy with the glasses, that's balding, is David McReynolds. But anyway, what did he say? When he joined the Socialist Party in 1951, he says when he think about the alphabet soup that exists today of the entire left, and what existed when he joined the party in 1951, it was the Socialist Party of America, which he was a member of, the Social Democratic Federation, the IWW, the Socialist Workers Party, the Socialist Labor Party, the Communist Party USA, the Independent Socialist League, the Jewish Labor Bund, the Workman Circle, Young People's Socialist League. That was pretty much it. Maybe some little independent groups here and there scattered across the country. And by the end of the 1960s, there was like several hundred, organizations just springing up out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, that's basically COINTELPRO. There was this division that was already existing division between the pro-Trotsky communist and the pro-Stalinist communist in the 1960s, right? And calling from the 1950s. And, this division that already existed, the CIA used COINTELPRO, a program basically to increase these divisions, increase these contradictions between the pro-Trotsky and the pro-Stalinist, pro-Leninist line in the Communist Party and all the other communist organizations, ML communist organizations at the time. And they funded this Trotsky element. And look, there's plenty of Trotskyists that exist. I'm willing to work with. We know this, but at the end of the day, it created they had these existing divisions, and the COINTEL funded everything from newspapers to new organizations. Look, I mean, this is an uncomfortable reality, but this is something we have to face, and this is something Jimmy Dore has admitted to, that the DSA was a creation of the CIA too. And it's not to criticize there's some good folks in the DSA. There's good folks in all these political parties. This is not to attack any political, like all the people within an organization, but to criticize how organizations came about, and to criticize, where the leadership of some of these organizations stands for, and the communist movement and the socialist movement in general in the United States has been played by the ruling class, by the CIA, the FBI, and all of these NGOs, environmentalist NGOs, and land back. Even if you agree with the policy, at the end of the day, a lot of the NGOs that support land back, for example, when it comes to native rights, it's one of the examples of way that the government has found a way to exploit leftists Just like they've exploited the right wing too. We know what happened with the militia movement in the 1990s. We don't need to get into the details, but we do know that there was a lot of infiltration coming from the federal government. They did the same thing against the right, and they did the same thing against the left, and they collapsed these organizations from the inside. Or if they're actually a threat, and then they build new organizations to bring people back to the Democratic Party, or in the case of the conservatives, to bring people back to the Republican Party.
Now the cattle ranchers, back in the about decade ago, during the Obama administration, that they had a standoff with the government. One of them, Almond Bundy was his name. One of them, what happened with him? When he left prison, he ended up joining. He was still a hardcore libertarian, but he ended up joining Antifa and the Black Lives Matter because he saw for himself what was being done to these people by the U.S. government, and he's like, "This is what we went through," and he's like, "No, I'm with them. I'm with." And so I mean, I saw, I was really impressed. This here's an example of somebody who's ostensibly from the right, seeing what happens and feeling that empathy factor, and joining for a positive cause. Yeah.
I mean, look, and that's infiltration that might exist and all that stuff. At the end of the day, we just have to operate like it doesn't exist and do our best to try to build coalitions. But give me a second. Someone's calling me while I'm in the middle of an interview. I guess I forgot to tell him I'm in an interview.
I had a new phone yesterday. Yesterday I lost my phone and I lost some valuable information from the protests.
That sucks.
Yeah, but anyway, I lost it on the train. Big story. So, but getting back to us, what were you saying?
I was just basically saying that you know what? That's really bad. I forgot, but I think at the end of the day, look, this is a good thing of this rally, but I do want to say that we should keep looking forward toward the future and building these coalitions. That's the only way forward, and let's just keep fighting this information war. Because that's what we're fighting right now.
Now I'm gonna tell you what Garland Nixon said the other day, and I put a lot of weight in what he has to say about most matters, and he spoke the other day at the rally, and he said that if you don't like all the speakers up there, form your own. Even if it's a small group, raise their awareness somehow.
Look, I'll give credit. There is a lot of the people that split off originally because they didn't want to work with Jackson Hinkle and they didn't want to work with the anarcho-capitalist or the libertarians or whatever. Okay, they're putting their own anti-war protests going on. And look, they say that they don't feel welcomed by us, and that's all fine. I can't control how they decide to operate. Organizations like Code Pink or whatever. But at the end of the day, I'll give them credit. They are standing against the war. It would have been more effective if they would have put their differences aside, like we put our differences aside to stand together. But at least they are doing their own thing, just like Garland Nixon suggested, and we should support them, even if, frankly, they didn't support us.
Now, in defense of Medea Benjamin, she actually physically was at the rally. She was she didn't speak on the stage, but she was there. She was physically there, supportive of the rally. And for my understanding, it was not her that had the issues. It was the Code Pink organization, which I'm a little disappointed. That's not. I mean, they should think twice before making a brash decision like that. It's bad.
I agree with you.
Bad optics.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad optics when you are purposely trying to make a division with, the anti-war movement, right? But at the same time, though, I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with them, on social politics, but I think ending this war is more important. And like, they might not be personally willing to be the bigger man to put their differences aside, but I still am. And when the day comes when this anti-war movement is undeniable, they will join hands with us because they'll know we're serious. And I welcome them. I welcome them because that's the attitude we need to have. None of this leftist infighting, none of this anti-imperialist infighting, none of this anti-war infighting. It's time for us to start putting our differences aside and actually fight for the things that we believe in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, well, we have here on a kind of a busy chat line. So, we have, Nikki, don't you? Nikki Chia?
Hey, how you doing, Nikki?
Yeah, formerly known as Radical Leftist Agenda.
There you go. How you doing?
Yeah. Let's see. We have Dirtbag Leftists. Let's see. Russia could stop this war by going back to Russia. So there's that. Well, I mean,
I disagree, but at the end of the day, as long as you agree with, stopping the funding of NATO, I'm willing to work with you. We don't have to fight again about this disagreement on whether you should support Russia or not.
Yeah. And then we have here, this is Jimmy here. Yo, Willie. That's Jimmy Sutherland. She's the one that hosts the show, What?
Okay. How you doing?
Yeah. And there she is again. Jimmy Saves the World. Willie and Tankie.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Right. All right. And then there's Artie, and I can never pronounce his last name. Rezviv. My man. Yeah.
There you go.
Really friendly person.
Good stuff.
Let's see. Internet Research Agency says Big Silver Orb. Hey, how are you doing?
How are you doing?
Let's see. All of them Soviet funded. Let's see. If Putin stopped fighting, the war ends. If Ukraine stopped fighting, Ukraine ends. And if the United States keep this shit up, we're going to have a nuclear war before too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Seems like we got some pushback coming for some of the folks in the audience, but that's all right.
Hey, I believe in diversity of thought and
there you go.
Welcome debate, and I don't expect my audience to agree with everything I say. I have some conservatives that think I say know me. They actually subscribe to my channel. So
there you go.
With the fire there.
Love a fire.
Yep.
That's my emoji, if you will. Every time you see my post on Twitter when I'm being all crazy over my Twitter post or whatever, you'll see me with the fire emojis and the army helmet there.
Yep. Let's see here. Big Silver Orb. Fine, thanks. All right. And so, listen, it's been a very, very productive discussion here, and I hope that we can see this anti-war movement build. And
absolutely.
At first, I heard of you was a few months ago on that. I guess it was back in the summer, half a year ago on Bosch. And,
yep.
Because I will occasionally. I'm not a fan of Bosch. I'm gonna tell you, but I will peek at what he has to say. Yeah, the only time you'll see me defend Bosch is when he defends Shoe on Head over some bullshit.
I met Shoe on Head at the Medicare for All march back. What was that, in 2021, I believe, in New York City. She's an interesting character. She has gone back and forth between following me on Twitter and blocking me on Twitter, and I'm very confused.
And she's not on Twitter anymore because apparently somebody bribed. It's hard to believe somebody told her that they would, if she gets rid of her Twitter page, they would pay her $50,000 a month.
Are you serious?
There's a meme going around. I don't believe it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
I mean, if that's all there is, I will suspend my Twitter and my YouTube thing, and I'll take some of that money and put it to good use politically, and and still live comfortably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Only if we all could get offers like that, right?
yeah. I don't think anybody's going to be knocking my door down anytime soon with that offer.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, she's interesting. Let me grab something here. To show you how silly I am. 3 years ago on Hell World, she decided to start selling these.
Okay.
She wanted a plushie.
That's honestly that sounds like something that she would sell.
Yeah. So I have a shoe on head plushie. Yeah. I was like,
Good
and
stuff.
like $25. I was like, I was like, I head and I gotta go ahead and get one of these. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and she said one day if she finds out somebody has one, and she'll go and post it on her YouTube channel. So I've been trying to let her know that Shoe's got a little fan over here.
Hey, look, the one thing I'll give Sean Head credit for politically is that, she has been one of the few people that has always consistently been against the whole woke left. She's consistently criticized for years since she's been on these platforms. And I obviously have my disagreements with Shu, but at the end of the day, I will work with anyone. If the day comes that Dylan Byrne or Vosh or any of these people say, you know what, Yankee, you were right about American imperialism. I want to stand with you against the wars. Well, bring your hand in, because at the end of the day, that's this real solution to all of our problems in the first place. Are these people ever going to do that? No, I don't think so. Maybe Sean Head, but the overwhelming majority of those people in that same circle, not the case.
Yeah, I agree. If Namiki Khan says that I've been wrong about everything, I'll be like, okay, you're forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. Look, we have to learn how to actually build political coalitions, and if the other side doesn't want to play ball, that's on them. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to play ball if anyone's willing to play ball.
Exactly. Well, I probably better. Well, you know what? I'm probably gonna, if you're willing to, I'll like to have you back again in the near future.
Absolutely. Willie, it's been great on your show. I really appreciate all of the, all the things that you argue. You are one of the people that reminds me that there are still some decent folks on the left, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. That while I reject the imperialist left, there will always be the dirtbag left that I can always appreciate and support.
Now, I went to a CPI event after the march.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there, and I do not know the name of the. You may know who I'm talking about. He said he was a Baptist minister, or was raised a Baptist, or something like that.
Gavin Lockhart, I think you're talking about.
Oh no, I do know Gavin. I do know Gavin for years online. We did
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Somebody else that spoke.
Okay.
And when he was speaking, he had like a goatee. I'm trying to think who he was. He spoke, and he was talking about his life and everything. And he said that he says that all of us here in this room, we are, no matter what organizational boundaries, what divides us in our organizations, we are the real left. We are the anti-cancel culture left. And he had a round of applause in that room and everything. And so that was really neat, to hear it, because sometimes I've been cold reactionary because I take a staunch stance against wokeness. I mean,
right.
Am I woke in my personal life? I would be considered woke. I'm too woke for a lot of conservatives. I'm not woke enough for the actual woke, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It's almost like you're caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what's happened with me, and so I've gone through my political life being hated by every ideological Every ideological faction you can imagine has hated me. And that's where I felt very comfortable using the term the dirtbag left, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, nobody gets shit on more than the dirtbag left. So I'm like, this
Yeah.
is where I fucking belong.
There you
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah. Well, listen,
Well,
you have a great day, and as I said, when I have to have you back on the show, we'll talk again soon, my friend.
absolutely. And let me just say real quick. Now I know this is your stream, but I want to just say my quick slogan real quick.
Go ahead.
Let us all remember what is most important, my friends: peace, prosperity, and the people's democracy. Thanks for watching.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you what we'll do when I edit this. I'll put down all your information. If you want to, just all your information that's on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, give it all to me. I'll put it down and recommend for everyone to follow you.
Absolutely, and on the same side, I'm going to upload this onto my YouTube channel if you don't mind,
Oh, absolutely.
and I'm going to make sure everyone follows you over on your side of everything. You know, I'd love to see some cross dialogue between our communities.
All right, absolutely. All right, and I guess I'll be signing off over here. I'll talk to you real briefly, privately after we end this thing over here.
Good stuff.